In a recent interview, Zev Porat, a messianic evangelist in Israel, claimed that the fullness of the Gentiles is a process. The process has begun. We are in the fullness of the Gentiles right now. And the more Gentile believers stand with Israel, the more the veil will be lifted. Porat is referring to Romans 11:25. For I want to let you know about this secret, brothers, so that you will not claim to be wiser than you are. Stubbornness has come to part of Israel until the full number of Gentiles comes to faith. Unfortunately, Porat has confused the process of reclamation, which began back at Pentecost, with the culmination of the fullness. This briefing will argue that the time for the lifting of Israel's blindness is still yet future, because the fullness of the Gentiles has not yet culminated. By having a correct understanding of Romans 11:25, we can properly gauge our proximity to the return of Christ. Let's begin by examining the grammar of the passage. Stubbornness or blindness has come to part of Israel. That's pretty self-explanatory. Earlier, in verse 7, Paul explained that the elect Jews obtained the promise through faith in Christ, but the rest were hardened. The noun and verb agreement is between the fullness and the coming in. The active voice subjunctive mood of the verb indicates that the lifting of the blindness is contingent on the fullness becoming an actuality. Thus it's correct to say that regardless of how close we are to the fullness, whether 1% or 99%, the blindness will equally be in effect. The lifting occurs completely and suddenly at the time when the full number of nationalities come into the olive tree. Therefore, the fullness of the Gentiles is not a process, but a defining moment in the eschatological scenario. As recognized by Richardson when he states, this will be the pattern. We will first see the full number of Gentiles in this present age come in, followed by the return of Jesus, then the salvation of all Israel. The fullness of the Gentiles is the pivotal event between the dispensation of grace and the return of the Lord. Now this begs the question, what does the fullness of the Gentiles actually look like? The word ethnos means a race, as of the same habit. That is to say, a tribe. Jesus' parting words to his disciples were to proclaim the gospel to the ends of the earth and make disciples of all nations. The Song of the 24 Elders proclaims that the redeemed is eventually made up of people from every tribe, people, language, and nation. The fullness may also have something to do with geography, given that baptism is an exercise in spiritual warfare, designed to announce the redemption of mankind out from under the principalities of lesser divine beings. Heiser observes that the purpose of Paul's life was to reach the last nation on earth, so that he could complete the task of bringing in the fullness of the Gentiles. Ours says that the Lord is being restrained by the extent to which the gospel has gone out. Since the day of the Lord will only come when the gospel has been preached everywhere, that which restrains is the will or plan of God, that the gospel be proclaimed to all men. Perhaps this is what Peter means when he says, look forward to and hasten the coming of the day of God. Neglecting the Great Commission could effectively stall the coming of Christ. Therefore, it is likely that the full number of ethnon in Romans 11:25 is concerned with ethnicity, geography, and language, and not simply a large number of non-Jews. The Joshua Project concords with this understanding of ethnon, classifying a people group as the largest group within which the gospel can spread, without encountering barriers of resistance. They detail some 41% of the world's people groups are unreached concerning the gospel. 69% of people groups are unreached in the 1040 window. Now this measurement of the fullness of the nations is only a best guess. The soteriological state of the Jews should also be monitored to gauge where the true fullness actually lies. The Joshua Project classifies Jews in their own general affinity group. They are currently a level 1.2. 95% of Jewish people groups are unreached, with only 2.5% of the nearly 15 million Jews professing to be Christian. Suffice to say that the blindness hasn't lifted from Israel yet, which implies that there is a ways to go before the fullness of the Gentiles is achieved. In conclusion, Porat has incorrectly understood the teaching of the fullness of the Gentiles, and misapprehended its currency as a sign of the times. Hence the need to clarify Romans 11:25 so that we can correctly discern the signs of the times and know what to do. Furthermore, by By knowing the relationship between the reclamation of the Gentiles and the return of Christ, we have a greater impetus for missionary work, to hasten the coming of the day of God.